He had everything money could buy. But on Christmas Eve, he sat alone at the best table in the city, and nobody even noticed. Every year, the same story. Daniel Mercer, CEO of one of the biggest real estate firms in the country, would call the same. Five-star restaurant 3 weeks in advance. Same table, corner booth, window view. The kind of spot where you can see the whole city glittering at night. And every single Christmas Eve, he would sit there alone, order a full 3-course meal, eat in silence, and leave a tip bigger than most people's rent. The staff knew him. They smiled at him. They called him Mr. Mercer, but none of them actually knew him. And that's the part nobody talks about. How a man can be surrounded by people every single day and still feel completely invisible. Tonight was supposed to be exactly the same, but it wasn't. Daniel was 44 years old and had built his company from nothing. Started with one small property deal at 22, slept on a friend's couch for 2 years, and grinded until the zeros in his bank account stopped making sense. By 30, he was on magazine covers. By 40, he owned 3 buildings in the city and had a team of 200 people working under him. But his marriage had fallen apart 6 years ago. No kids. His parents were gone. His brother lived across the world and they talked maybe twice a year. And his friends, if you could call them that, were really just business contacts who disappeared the moment there was nothing in it for them. So every Christmas Eve, Daniel did what he always did. He dressed up, drove to Harlow's, the finest restaurant downtown, and had dinner alone. Not because he had to, because he didn't know what else to do. That night, he arrived at 7 o'clock sharp. Black coat, clean shave. The hostess, a young woman named Claire, greeted him the same way she always did. Warm smile. "Good evening, Mr. Mercer. Your table is ready." He nodded, followed her to the corner booth, and sat down. The restaurant was packed. Christmas Eve will do that. Families with little kids still wearing their church clothes. Couples holding hands across the table. Old people who had been married so long they didn't need to talk anymore. They just sat there together and that was enough. Daniel watched all of it from his corner. Ordered his soup. Opened the menu even though he already knew what he wanted. Just to have something to look at. And then the door opened. She came in with 2 little girls. Twins. Maybe 5 or 6 years old. Both of them in matching yellow winter jackets. Eyes wide. Looking around the restaurant like they had just walked into a palace. The woman looked exhausted. The kind of tired that doesn't go away with sleep. Her coat was clean but old. Her hair was pulled back in a hurry. She was carrying a small purse and holding both girls' hands at the same time. And she walked up to the hostess with a smile that was clearly working very hard to stay on her face. Her name was Maya, and she had saved up for 3 months to bring her. Daughter's here tonight. Her husband had passed away 2 years ago. A sudden illness, the kind that gives you almost no warning. She had been doing everything alone since then. Working 2 jobs, dropping the girls off at school, picking them up, helping with homework, making dinner, doing it all. And she had promised herself and them that this Christmas would be special, that they would have one real beautiful memory from this year. She had made a reservation. She was sure she had, but when Claire checked the system, there was nothing under her name. The restaurant was completely full. Every single table was taken. Maya felt her stomach drop. She looked down at her girls, little Lily and little Rose, who were now pointing at the Christmas decorations on the ceiling and whispering to each other, completely unaware of what was happening. She looked back at Claire and said very quietly, "Is there anything at all? Even just a small spot somewhere?" Claire looked genuinely sorry. She checked again. Nothing. Daniel had been watching from his corner booth. He didn't mean to stare, but something about her, the way she was trying so hard to hold it together, the way she kept glancing at her daughters with this look that said, "I cannot let them see me fall apart." Something about that hit him somewhere deep. He stood up. He walked over to the front, and before anyone could say anything, he looked at Maya and said, "Please take my table." She blinked. "Sorry? My table. The corner booth. It's the best one in the restaurant." He paused. "I was sitting alone anyway." Maya shook her head immediately. "I can't do that. That's your table." "I reserved it," Daniel said. "That means I get to decide what to do with it. And I'd like to give it to you and your daughters." One of the little girls, Lily, tugged on her mother's sleeve and whispered loudly, "Mama, say yes." The whole exchange lasted maybe 90 seconds, but something shifted in that moment. Maya looked at him, really looked at him, and she said, "Thank you, truly." Daniel nodded, turned to leave. And that's when Claire stepped in and said, "Mr. Mercer, we actually have one open spot at the bar. It's not much, but..." He had already started toward the exit. But then Rose, the other twin, ran after him. She grabbed his hand with both of hers and looked up at him with these enormous brown eyes and said, "You should eat with us. It's Christmas. Nobody should eat alone on Christmas." He didn't know what to say to that. A 5-year-old had just said the thing he had been feeling for 6 years and never been able to put into words. Maya called after her daughter, embarrassed. "Rose, sweetheart, come back." But Daniel was already smiling. A real one. The kind that takes you by surprise. He looked at Maya. She looked at him. She gave the smallest nod, and he sat down. What happened over the next 2 hours was nothing dramatic. No grand speeches, no movie moment, just 4 people sharing a meal. The girls asked Daniel 100 questions. Did he have a dog? What was his favorite color? Could he do a British accent? He tried the accent. It was terrible. They laughed so hard Rose nearly knocked over her water glass. Maya told him about her daughters, about their school plays and their obsession with frogs, and how Lily had recently decided she wanted to be a scientist and also a princess. Daniel told them about how he had started his company, leaving out the lonely parts, and the girls listened like it was the most exciting story they had ever heard. At one point, Lily looked at him very seriously and said, "You seem sad sometimes, even when you're laughing." He didn't answer that, but he didn't forget it either. When the evening ended, they said goodbye at the door. The girls hugged him, just like that, no hesitation, the way only little kids do. Maya shook his hand and said, "I hope next Christmas is different for you." He drove home that night and sat in his apartment for a long time, just thinking. He had a table for one. He had everything he had ever worked for. And a 5-year-old with frog obsession had understood his life better than he had. He picked up his phone and called his brother. It rang 4 times. Then his brother picked up and said, "Daniel, it's late. Everything okay?" And Daniel said, "Yeah, I just wanted to talk." Sometimes the most expensive table in the room means nothing if you're the only one sitting at it. And sometimes the strangest, most unplanned night of your life is the one that finally wakes you up. If this story hit you, watch the next one playing on your screen right now. You won't want to miss it.